Get ready for the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down District 4 most weeks here on IdahoSports.com. My name is Brandon Baney, and today we are joined by the man who is dazed and confused, Scott Burton. Scotty, why are you so disoriented?
Oh, well, we can thank our friend, our boss, our CEO for all of this. We just went up and called all the Holt games over the past weekend, me and you and Paul, and we had a great time. Broadcasts were phenomenal, by the way, and if you haven't had a chance to check those out, we did something that we've never done before, nobody does, and then we had a sideline reporter coming in live with breaking action and whatever. So the three of us absolutely killed it, had a great time. The caveat to that was Paul was sick a little bit when he was there. And, well, I rode up with him. I roomed with him. I rode back with him. And guess who's sick now? So I'm a little dazed and confused, all hopped up on NyQuil or Dayquil and trying to get through my day. And fun fact, and we were just talking about this off air, is that there's always something weird going on. I mean, when you get the three of us together, there's always something weird happening, but it's always fun. Last year at state basketball, Paul, I don't know what he ate, but he chipped a tooth, and he was in like pain throughout the whole thing. I remember him trying to find some numbing drops or something, or I was about ready to grab some pliers and just fix it myself, but he chipped a tooth at state basketball. Well, we're at state football. He gets me sick. And then I'm home just feeling miserable. And I thought, you know what? What would make me feel better? A purple Skittle. Well, there's a little joke behind the purple Skittle because I always kind of make fun of like all these broadcasters from other places that show up. I want sparkling water in my dressing room, whatever. So my all go-to is purple Skittles. Well, I called a game at Bishop Kelly, and Logan brings me purple Skittles and baits me on the air to say purple Skittles. I fell for it big time. So he plops out these purple Skittles. It was a box of purple Skittles that Paul had gotten me. And so anyway, over the weekend when I got home, I'm thinking, I'm sick, Paul. You know what? A purple Skittle sounds good. So I grab one out, chomp down on it, and crack my stinking tooth. So it's like Paul has hexed me and got me sick. I'm blaming him for cracking my tooth. I'm going in this afternoon to get that fixed. And it's like, holy cow, thanks a lot. So anyway, that is why I'm dazed and confused right now.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. We might have to call in Dr. Phil for all of it.
Tell me about it. Oh, my word. Yeah, tell me about it. So that was just like an information vomit for all of our listeners, and I apologize, but behind the scenes is a lot of fun.
Yes.
Are you preoccupied, Brandon?
I'm writing down the title of the podcast. It's a lot to unpack there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot to. Oh, great.
Yeah. So
okay, right, I'm ready when you are.
Okay. Well, you talked about behind the scenes. Speaking of behind the scenes, people might be wondering, where have we been the last 2 weeks? This is the first time we've done the podcast in this form. So 2 weeks ago, I was preoccupied with some personal life stuff. So long story short, I live in Pocatello. I think most people know that tune in, but my wife got a transfer in her job. We're going to be moving to Coeur d'Alene sometime in the new year. So we were kind of taking care of stuff for that 2 weeks ago. And I was going to try and squeeze in the podcast, but it just didn't work. And then last week, I was still kind of catching up, and we did our live state football preview show as kind of a placeholder. But now we're back with the regular Magic Valley Prepcast, regular format, and it'll be that way every week moving forward. Even though I'm moving, that doesn't change anything. We'll still do the podcast. Doesn't really matter where I live. As long as you still live in the Magic Valley, Scott, I think we're going to be all right. So
yeah, I have no plans of going anywhere, so I guess we're good.
Okay, sounds good. So 2 weeks ago, we had plans to talk about state swimming because it had just happened, and we still wanted to highlight the Magic Valley athletes that went over and competed in state swim. This was a couple of weeks back now, but On the 4A boys side, Twin Falls took third in the team competition with 133 points. Bishop Kelly took second, and the first place winner was Skyline. So that was your 1, 2, 3. We had a couple of individual winners as well. On the boys side, Carson Reese of Twin Falls was your 100 breaststroke champion. And then we had a double winner from Kimberly, which was pretty cool. Elijah Souza, he won the 50 freestyle and the 100 freestyle.
Yeah, Elijah Souza just tore it up, and I mean that's impressive. Anytime you can come away with a state title, let alone 2 of them, you're obviously doing something right. And so a little digging into, Elijah, it just doesn't surprise anybody if you know the kid that he was a double state champion. He is a true student of the game. I mean, he's a kid that's going to be, researching and put in the work to improve his technique. A lot of people, I think, look at swimming and go, well, just don't drown, right? There's so much technique to it that if you really want to be good, you've got to figure it out. And this is a kid that spends the time figuring it out. He critiques, he strategizes, he sets goals, and then he carries them out because he knows what he's doing, because he truly is a student of the sport. And, on top of that, the kid is very well liked. He's obviously he's an athlete. He's a musician. People talk very strongly about his character. He's obviously, good at what he does, but he gives to others, and everybody that I talked to really had a lot of great things to say about this kid. Just not about necessarily being an athlete, but about being a good person as well.
Yeah, that's an incredible story, and it's more impressive because Kimberly is a 3A school, but there is no 3A in swimming. It's 4A and don't drown, like you said. So for a kid from Kimberly to go against all the, Bishop Kelly, Twin Falls, Skyline, and knock them all back and win 2 events, I thought was just really incredible.
No, it truly, and I think people need to understand that too, that, the swimming setup is a little bit different, just because in our district down here, so to speak, I mean, it is all those schools together, whether it's Kimberly, Gooding, those 3As, Lighthouse, part of it when they had a team. I mean, they were all part of that district down here because swimming just doesn't have that classification that most sports have. And so these, smaller schools are, they've got to up their game a little bit, and their athletes have got to really perform against some of the better, bigger schools from around the state that may have maybe a bit more opportunity, but, heck, guys like Elijah just rise to the occasion.
Yeah, really awesome story for Elijah Souza, double winner from Kimberly, 50 freestyle, 100 freestyle. Carson Reese of Twin Falls was also an individual champ in the 100 breaststroke. And then on the girls' side, we had one individual champion as well, Isabella Tagnoni from Wood River. And I hope I'm saying that name correctly. If not, somebody let me know, Brandon at IdahoSports.com. But Isabella Tagnoni of Wood River was your 100 breaststroke champion on the 4A girls' side as well. So congrats to all of our individual champs in swimming.
Yep, absolutely. Great job by the Magic Valley. Good representation.
Definitely. All right, let's move on to football. There weren't too many Magic Valley teams that were left when we got to championship weekend, but of course in the 8-man game, you can take it to the bank. Somebody is going to be playing from the Magic Valley. And Oakley kicked off championship weekend last Thursday night at Holt Arena with really a game that was never close. They beat Grace for their 3rd consecutive 1A D1 football championship by a final score of 58-20. Scott, you and I were on the sideline for this game, so we got to take in the game from a little bit of a different perspective. We did some pregame coaches interviews, and Brennan Jones, the great head coach for Oakley, said, we want to inflict violence, is how he put it. And boy, did they. Not like hurting people, but like, we're going to be physical and we're going to let them know that we came to play.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, he was emphatic about his game plan too, and the physicality that he needed to bring, or at least his boys needed to bring, and that was number 1 on the list. And he said it to us twice, once before the game, once coming out of the locker room, and that was one of the the cool things that we were able to do with our broadcasts were to get those perspectives, the pregame interviews, the walk and talks with the coach coming out of the locker room, just like they do on ESPN or whatever. And it was very cool because, that kind of stuff we wouldn't get, just parking ourselves up in the booth in a game. But it gave us a little bit more insight onto what their plan was. And you could see Oakley was very physical, and that was their thing. And we thought that this game might be the one that we called that could get out of control. And Oakley just dominated from start to finish. They are just a dang good football team. They played physical. They played violent at times. And they executed 58 points on the board. It was a good showing by Oakley. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, Bryce Sevier was our IdahoSports.com player of the game. He ended up scoring 3 times, twice on the ground, and then he returned the opening kickoff of the second half, 85 yards for his score. And that was another thing Coach Jones said was, Brennan Jones, he said that Bryce Sevier is good for a couple of big plays per game on each side of the ball. And he had been mostly playing defense as he came back from a pretty serious injury he suffered playing summer basketball. But finally, they kind of unleashed him on offense in the championship game. And boy, we saw what he can do. And he's only a junior, so he's going to be, Oakley loses a lot of really talented seniors. But Bryce Sevier is a guy that they can build around again for next year.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be a pretty good team coming back. It's just kind of rebuild. It's always reload.
That's right. Well, let's talk about the other 8-man team that was competing. This was on Friday in the 1A D2 championship game, Dietrich and Kendrick. And everybody, oh yeah, Kendrick's so dominant. They're going to win by 40, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I think this game's going to be closer than people think. Dietrich, people have been sleeping on a little bit in the regular season. And even in the preseason, Scott, you did the pregame interview with Rick Estelle, the head coach from Dietrich. And he said, hey, look, we were picked to finish 3rd in our conference in the preseason coaches poll behind Castleford and Camas. And they kind of took that personally a little bit this year, didn't they?
They certainly did. Coach Estelle made that very clear right away. Just like, hey, give us something to put a chip on our shoulder about, and we're going to get behind it and let it drive us. And that was something that got him going right away. When you are good and you don't get respect, then man, that's all you need sometimes is, you see a lot of talented teams that don't have motivation. And then you see a lot of less talented teams that have motivation. And that motivation is that driving force that separates you from everybody else. Now, I'm not saying Dietrich wasn't, they certainly were. It's just that they needed that little push. And disrespected, and I'm not saying disrespected. I don't mean it like that. I'm just saying that, not to be given a chance early on to be as good as they were, that helped Dietrich. And then, like you said, Kendrick has been so dominant in this 1A D2 stuff that, everybody thought, yeah, Kendrick was just going to roll over people. They did it throughout the tournament, 46-0 over Camas, and then another 38-8 over Castleford. And they're just blowing through these Sawtooth Conference or the Southern Idaho, 8-man teams. And well, guess what? Here's another one. Here comes Dietrich. What are you going to do? Are you going to roll over them too? No, that was a really good game. 42-34 was your final. And it was not really in decided until late. So Dietrich showed well. And Coach Estelle did a great job this year bringing his boys around to compete with Kendrick and get to the state title game.
Yeah, it was a wild final 3 minutes of regulation, Scott, where Ty Kep throws a 42-yard touchdown pass to his running back Sawyer Hewitt for Kendrick, and he was our IdahoSports.com player of the game. Hewitt was, and that gave Kendrick a 34-22 lead with just 2:55 to play. But Dietrich, just as quickly responds. Cody Power throws a screen pass to Peyton Sneddon. He takes it 69 yards to the end zone for the touchdown. And with just over 2 minutes to play, Dietrich lines up to go for 2, didn't get it, but they were down just 34-28. And so we're thinking, okay, Dietrich's got a chance. They still have their timeouts. They've got to stop Kendrick though. And they They stop Kendrick on first down. They stop Kendrick on second down. And then Kendrick delivers what we thought at the time might be the dagger, where Sawyer Hewitt busts right up the middle for a 54-yard touchdown. Nobody was home for Dietrich. And just like that, Kendrick was back in front by 2 scores, 42-28. And Kendrick was starting to celebrate a little bit. And at that point, we thought, oh, man, that's so deflating, because Dietrich had battled back and gotten it to within 4, and then they allow a big home run on the ground.
Yeah, but they didn't quit, and that was one of the cool things that we saw from Dietrich was their resiliency. I mean, they were fighting the playground bully in Kendrick, and they could have just said, you know what, we gave it a good shot, after getting down and rolling, they could just say we're done here, but they didn't. They fought until the very, very last minute or two, and they showed some toughness and resilience.
Yeah, so Dietrich's trailing at this point, 42-28, with just over 2 minutes to go. They're down 2 scores. Cody Power starts leading them down the field. Case Robertson, for 15 yards, boom. Case Robertson for 20 yards, boom. All of a sudden, they're down near the goal line. Or actually, that was the final drive. But Cody Power is leading them down the field. He's completing passes, and then there's this crazy pass to Connor Perkins, where because I don't think Connor Perkins was the intended receiver. The intended receiver fell down for Dietrich. The defensive back for Kendrick fell down, and Perkins was there alone to make this grab. It ends up being this crazy touchdown, 42-34. Have you ever seen a play like that before, Scott, where like 2 guys fall down and then Connor Perkins all of a sudden is just like, oh, I'll grab it and take it? It was like a 40-yard touchdown pass to Perkins.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to be in the right place at the right time and make sure that you stay engaged in the play, even though if it's not going to you, you got to be ready to react. And it was just one of those plays that it just was bizarre. The ball bounced the right way, and if you're going to win games, you've got to have the ball bounce the right way. We saw that in a couple of other games too, and I think we saw that in the 4A game on an opening drive or a second drive where a ball just kind of got thrown up into the air, and then somebody just was in the right place, snatched it out of the air, and it ended up being a touchdown on that drive. And so, yeah, you have got to be engaged at all times, and that was one of those plays that their players were.
So it's officially a 41-yard touchdown pass from Power to Connor Perkins, and that makes the score with 1:04 to play, 42-34. So Dietrich is down 2. So they need to, and they only have 1 timeout remaining, so they can't kick it deep. That's not an option. They have to go for the onside kick. Dietrich goes for the onside kick, Scott, and they recover it. And this is when Holt Arena came alive. Dietrich recovers the onside kick, and all of a sudden they've got the ball at like the Kendrick 40 with like a minute left to play, like an eternity for Dietrich. What a huge play that was, that onside kick.
Oh, they're so hard to do. I mean, it's all chance. You've got to be able to get the right, I guess, force on the ball with, the kicking leg, but then at the same time, it's got to take a hop, and you can't control those hops. And you just got to get lucky on those. And boy, Dietrich was there. But at that time, momentum had shifted big time. I mean, Kendrick had this thing won, up 2 scores. Dietrich marched down the field. They got that 41-yard touchdown on that weird play. Now they have the onside kick, and you could just see Big Mo just start to shift. And right now, with about a minute and change left on the clock, it was all on the side of Dietrich.
Yes, so they kicked it at a freshman for Kendrick named Jack Twite. It went off his chest, and Brody Torgerson recovered the onside kick for Dietrich. And then all of a sudden, Power is like in 2 plays. It was like 20 yards to Case Robertson, 15 yards to Case Robertson, and Dietrich had the ball at like the 10. And there was still, 40 seconds to go. And all of a sudden, we're like, man, Dietrich might score too quickly and leave too much time for Kendrick at the other end, because Dietrich had to get not only the touchdown, but the 2-point conversion. And this is when, from the 9-yard line, Power drops back to pass. He's hit as he throws, and that caused the pass to be just a little bit behind the receiver. It gets intercepted by Kendrick at the goal line, and that was pretty much, curtains for Dietrich at that point. But who came up with the interception for Kendrick? the freshman Twite, the guy who flubbed the onside kick.
Yeah, we talked about that on the air. It was just like from goat to hero, and it was good for him. And and I want to say one thing about how tough these kids are, is that there was a point in the game, and it was in the second half where Cody Power had injured his hand. Something happened on his throwing hand, right? And so he's off to the side, and I'm watching this whole thing through the binoculars just to see what's going on. And I mean, he was one of those things where he was looking away, and it almost looked like they were trying to get his finger or something pop back into place. Something was dislocated, and they were working on it. And I kept seeing him pull on it. And Cody's kind of looking away, and they finally got it. And I just saw him stall. And then next thing you know, he's like, glove back on, and ran right back out onto the field before the official stopped him and said, "No, you came out of the game. You're going to sit for a minute." And so after that, next play, he was back in, slinging it around again on something that I think got dislocated on his throwing hand that they had to pop back into place. And then he's back out there doing it. I mean, that is how tough that kid was. And a lot of these players are, especially when, and we talk about this every now and then, and I'm not saying kids from bigger schools aren't tough, because they are, but there's a special kind of toughness when you get into these small towns, because these kids are dealing with different types of stuff. And a lot of times games and practices for these kids are the easiest things that they're doing all day long, right? Because they're either on the farm, they're doing this, they're doing that. And it just showed in that moment right there, which spoke volumes to me, the toughness of a kid to get back out there and get it done and almost lead his team to a title. Yeah, I thought it was impressive.
Yeah, Cody Power is such a fun athlete to watch. You hold your breath every time he drops back to pass, because he could sling it downfield for a touchdown. He could take off and run for a touchdown as well. True dual threat. And so Dietrich comes up just short, but the fact that they pushed this Kendrick juggernaut to the brink of overtime, they came up a score short. I mean, it was an impressive season for Dietrich. It was their second championship in the last 3 years, championship appearance. Of course, they won the title 2 years ago. And the Dietrich is a program that really is enjoying a nice little period here. We think of Dietrich as this juggernaut, and they have been recently, but that championship that they won in 2019 was their first in school history. It's not like they're this perennial power year in, year out. So it's been nice to see Dietrich have this little run of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can't say enough about Coach Estelle and what they've been able to accomplish there at Dietrich in arguably, well, I don't know, it's arguably the toughest conference, in the state in 8-man, because anybody that comes out of this is battle tested. And Kendrick, I mean, they're the perennial favorites every year. I mean, Kendrick just has it going on, but it's going to be somebody out of this conference that's going to challenge for a title almost every year, just because these teams and these kids down here are so good and so tough.
Yep. So it's nice to see. And now Dietrich all those guys will get ready for basketball, where they're going to duke it out with Camas County. Camas, of course, got to the championship game last year in boys basketball. It's going to be another juggernaut conference there as well. So that kind of closes the book on fall sports. Some winter sports have already started, like girls basketball. Next week we'll dive into what's going on in girls hoops early on. Kimberly looks really good. In 4A, you've got a lot of questions. Burley lost a lot. Canyon Ridge looks pretty decent. Twin Falls, of course, is always solid. And even at the lower levels, Cary, etc. There's a lot of good girls basketball team. Richfield is really good. There's a lot of good girls basketball happening right now. And again, I just wish there was that separation where girls basketball just gets overshadowed a little bit at the start of the year, because it runs along with the end of the football season, but is what it is. So
yeah, it does. It is what it is, and it's just unfortunate, but hopefully we can shed some light on some girls teams and programs moving forward, because there are some good programs here and some good athletes in the Valley.
Definitely. So yeah, we'll talk girls hoops next week, and then boys basketball will be starting soon. Wrestling, of course. Jerome always has one of the early season tournaments in wrestling. It's kind of like a lot of coaches gauge that as, okay, the season has now officially kicked off. Jerome always has a very early season wrestling tournament that we can talk about down the line as well. But yeah, we'll start getting into winter sports next week, Scott. Sound good?
This sounds awesome to me. So I'm looking forward to bring to you. Shut the door on fall sports and let's get into winter.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving as well. That's coming up this week. So Scott, happy Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
And happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners and viewers as well. If you're traveling somewhere, we're thinking of you. Hopefully you get there safely, to and from your Thanksgiving destination. And otherwise, we'll see you back here next week for another edition of the Magic Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.